come, O Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. Please be seated. You know, there are some days when I have this time before you that I actually kind of dance back and forth between where I want to go and where I'm going. And so where I'm going today is just to say to you that when I was a little boy, we lived on Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana. Malmstrom Air Force Base was a strategic air command base. This was in the 50s, relatively early 50s. Now those of you who are my age or thereabouts know that the 50s were a very, very difficult time. Periodically we would have what would be called alerts, full alerts. And what that meant for families is different from what it meant for the military, the members of the Air Force themselves. The members of the Air Force were called out to their duty stations, and the huge bombers that were on the ground they were scrambled, and they left they went out and did their sorties, etc., etc. But for families it was different. We all gathered up our preparation and put it into the back of a car, and we joined in a caravan, a very long group of cars, and we would go up into the hills in Montana. We would go into some canyon, and then we would sit and wait until the alert was over. And those alerts were, my brothers and sisters, they were real. If you were alive in those days, you remember they were real. We were expecting at any time to go to war with Russia, the USSR. And I'm at a loss for words, because here we are now, I'm 66, and standing here before you, and this very week, with the shooting down of the Russian jet by the Turkish, the language that people were using was the possibility that we were going to go into World War III with the Russians. Oh my word. I can hardly even imagine. I can hardly even imagine that kind of language was used out loud, and yet it was. And it was used by people who, I believe they were thinking people. I believe they were. And God willing, this kind of Armageddon, this battle on the plains of Megiddo will not take place. Ever. Ever. And then we have this language here, this apocalyptic language in the Gospel of Luke, and it describes similar events to what would happen in this awful scenario. It describes similar events and says that we should be ready for these terrible things, that all these things that are happening in the world are signs and portents that those persons who are alive right now will experience the coming of Jesus Christ, the coming of the Son of Man, who will redeem the world and make all things right. And I'm stuttering today, you can tell, because this has been a hard one for me. Sometimes things flow a little bit more easily, sometimes they don't. And one of the things that is difficult for me here is that the language clearly says those are persons who are alive today, and they will see these events come to pass, and then the Son of Man will come, and all will be made right. Now you understand that in the apocalyptic language, you all remember from our conversations before, apocalyptic language means that God is going to come and going to put all the injustices in the world right. That all of the things that injure us, all of the things that weigh down upon us are going to be lifted from us, and we're going to live in a world in which love reigns and that justice is before us all. And those people are dead. And here we are, and we're in a circumstance where we look out there and we see challenges before us. And this is a kind of an irony. This is kind of an irony. When I was in the music business, one of the things that frightened me more than anything else, one of the things that frightened me it actually would make me ill, and I would be ill before I would go on and do a performance. I would be afraid that I would forget. That I would forget the words, or that I would skip something, or that I would not hear the cue that is coming in an appropriate fashion. I wouldn't respond. And that actually happened to me on more than one occasion, where I would be standing on the stage, and I would know my role. I would have this role down pat, and I would hear, I would see the fig tree and notice that it was bearing fruit. And in musical terms, that's the cue coming. And I would hear the cue coming, and I would go, I can't think of the words, I can't think of the words, I can't think of the words, I can't think of the words. And that kind of fear is a very real fear, my brothers and sisters. There is nothing like it, I can assure you. Perhaps incoming, the army soldiers would say, that's worse, and they would be right. But this was a fear of death almost. And then I would hear the cue and I would step forward. Nessun dorma! Nessun dorma! And my body would remember the words. And I would thank God that my body would remember the words. And this comes to me for a very strange reason, I suppose. Why were we back in the 50s getting in our cars and going out into the canyons? Why were we doing that? We were rehearsing. We were putting into our bodies the proper response to a threat that may take place. And when I rehearse to learn a role, I rehearse that physically, my brothers and sisters. I don't just say it in my head. I don't just read the scripture or the song. I don't just read it. I say it out loud. And if I'm given something to do, I walk that so that I have the truth of what I am about to do in my body. Are you beginning to see where I'm going here? We are called upon here, looking ahead to the birth of Jesus Christ. We are called to inculcate into our bodies the truth of what we believe. We are called to inculcate within our bodies the realities of life and how we respond to it out of the loving gestures and truth that Jesus Christ provides for us in this world. So that on the day when our cue comes, when the fig tree tells us, when we step forward, we will be able to sing. We will be able to do and be those persons which indeed will change the world. Change the world. Advent for us is a time, of preparation, right? It's a time of preparation. It's a time in which we look into ourselves so that as we proceed toward the birth of Jesus Christ, we can find within ourselves the hope that we need and the strength that we need to be what we need to be. Be on the alert. Be on the alert.